Hello, boys and squirrels. Welcome to Sunday School at St. Mary the Virgin Episcopal Church. My name is Miss Lehmann, Katherine Lehmann, and I haven't come to St. Mary's for a while. I'm living in San Rafael right now, and of course now we have the coronavirus. But I was a member for about 25 years, and it's still my spiritual home. And I taught Sunday school with Miss Clark and Miss Goose Cox, who is greatly missed, for 14 years. I usually taught third grade, and I was famous for giving unhealthy snacks to my students, such as donuts. Now I'm working for the former Bishop of California, Bishop William Swing, working at the United Religions Initiative. So if you're curious about that, go to uri.org. That's uri.org. Today's story is about some sheep, partly, and it's about forgiveness. Now, I notice when I'm looking at some of the other Sunday school lessons from the Reynolds and Donna Davidson and Jackie and Nancy, I just saw that there's a lot of stories about sheep. And you know, the reason for that is because in the Middle East, they're a sheep culture, and they've had sheep and shepherds for centuries, and it's still true today. So, and we have so many stories, like in the New Testament, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. In Psalm 23, which was written by David, we have, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So today I'm telling you the story of David and Bathsheba. So everybody, you know who King David was. He was the second king of Israel. The first one, King Saul, didn't work out so well, but King David was a very successful king. And remember him? He was the little guy with the slingshot who killed the giant Philistine, Goliath. And King David and his troops were able to take over the city of Jerusalem, the holy city, and live there for a while. So it was under Jewish rule. This was about 600 years before Jesus was born. And so in this story, King David is on the roof. Now, if you ever see houses in the Middle East, a lot of the roofs are flat because it was so hot there that people in the evening love to go up on the roof. It's much cooler up there than down in the hot houses. And you can have dinner on the roof, you can have a drink, you can feel the evening breeze, you can take a bath. Bathsheba was getting ready to take a bath when King David saw her. I don't know if it's a weird coincidence that her name is Bathsheba, but anyway, he saw her and said, oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful woman in the world. I want her to be my wife. I have to have her. Well, he already had so many wives. He didn't need another one in his harem, but kings get whatever they want. And so he told his servants, please bring that woman to me. Well, there was a big problem because Bathsheba was already married. She was married to a super cool soldier who was a great warrior. He was part of this special group called the 30 really excellent soldiers, sort of like the Navy SEALs. And so he was much loved by his comrades and the Israeli military. And so he was a good guy fighting for King David, putting his life on the line. Well, so after that, King David was so crazy with love and lust that he had to have Bathsheba. And he said, he sent a letter to the military and said, please put Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, on the front lines in battle. So if you're at the beginning on the front line, chances are you're going to be the first to get hit. It's the most dangerous spot. If you're at the end of the line, you're going to be protected. And so usually the kings are at the end of the line or staying home, like in David's case, he was staying in his palace while the troops were out fighting the Philistines. So anyway, he sent that message and Uriah was killed in battle. It was an honorable death, but it was really murder that had been committed. So King David took Bathsheba to be his wife. and she got pregnant with a baby boy. And everybody was talking about how terrible this was because they remembered Uriah. Well, in those days, prophets would come and talk to kings and leaders to tell them that they'd made a terrible mistake and that God was not pleased. And Nathan came and said to David, I want to tell you a story. So he tells him a story about sheep, something that everyone can relate to, especially David, who had been a shepherd himself, the shepherd boy. So Nathan tells the story of a rich man in Jerusalem who has hundreds of sheep and cattle and lives next door to a poor man who only has one baby sheep. Now, what's the word? What's that called? A baby sheep is a lamb. Yes. He only has one little lamb, and he loves this lamb like a little puppy, and he feeds it from his hand, and it's the only thing that matters to him in the world. And the next door neighbor, when he has a visitor, just takes that sheep without thinking and slaughters it and serves it for dinner to his guests. He takes the one sheep. When King David heard this story, he said, that's terrible. That man should be put to death. And Nathan said, that man is you. That man is you. Because by taking Bathsheba when she already had a husband and then putting him to death, he was being just as selfish or worse than that guy with the baby lamb. So, but David immediately understood. He felt terrible. Nathan helped him to understand. And for days, he was miserable. And he poured out his heart to God, and God forgave him. So there's a message in that, all of the stories in the Hebrew scriptures are filled with people who make huge mistakes, terrible sins. They're fatally flawed, and yet God chooses to use them anyway. Moses was like that. Moses killed an Egyptian, and God still used him to bring his people out of Egypt. So now, the next thing that I want to do is sing the books of the Bible. We only have time for the Old Testament today, but there are 66 books in the Protestant Bible. Catholics have a few extra ones. There's 39 books in the Old Testament, and our story today came from the book of 1 Samuel. And one of the books of the Bible is the Psalms, which is a collection of songs that supposedly King David wrote. So let me sing this for you today. I'm a little bit hoarse, but here goes. Let us sing the books of Moses, for he wrote the law. There's Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers, and the last is Deuteronomy, the longest of them all. Let us sing the books of history which tell of the Jews. There's Joshua and Judges and the story of Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, which give us the record, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther the queen. Let us sing the books of poetry, the songs the Jews sang, Job the patient, Psalms of David, and the Proverbs of the wise man, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon. Let us sing the major prophets, there's 5 of them all. Isaiah, Jeremiah, who wrote Lamentations, Ezekiel and Daniel, who was true to his God. Let us sing the minor prophets, there's 12 of them all. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Thank you so much for listening. There's one more thing I wanted to say, and that is that David and Bathsheba had a son, and his name was Solomon, and he became the next king after David. And we know that Jesus came from the house of David, so he is related to Jesus, and God blessed him in spite of making some terrible mistakes. Have a good week, and be sure to turn the other cheek and forgive as much as you are able. Take care. Bye.